12 burning questions surrounding the Buffalo Sabres going into this season. Next up, can Jiri Kulich be this team's number one center? We already asked about Josh Norris. Now we'll ask it about Kulik. Coming up on Locked On Sabres.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into a beautiful Thursday here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. And as always, thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check us out on YouTube. Go watch the show there. That's how I'm doing my podcast now. It's a lot of it's on YouTube, and we are available there. Hit the like and subscribe button if you would. And also, you can hit up our text club. You want to reach out to the show. You got a comment or a question. We had a text question today in there about Jiri Kulich, who we're going to talk about a lot today on the show. And if you're not already a texter and you'd like to sign up for that, maybe you're thinking, season's coming up. We're a couple weeks away from preseason, and then after that to the regular season, and that's the time you want to sign up. Join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres, the place for that. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, be sure to download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Sneaky Joe DiBiase, we're talking some Sabres today. We're talking Jiri Kulich. We're a day out from the Prospects Challenge, and we will keep you updated on everything that we see from those games and how the prospects look. We'll talk a little bit about that coming up on our next couple of shows, so be sure to stay tuned for that. By the way, as we do the series here, getting ready for the season, like the biggest 12 questions about this team. If you missed our first couple, whether that's on the goaltending situation or whether it's on how good the blue line will be or how good is Josh Norris going to be. We asked, could Josh Norris be this team's number one center? And my summary or takeaway was probably not the best idea. He's tough to rely upon due to injuries, and there's a question about how good he is on top of that. Well, today we're going to ask the same question about the other potential number one center for the Buffalo Sabres. It's a 1A, 1B going into the season, in my opinion. And the other person in that story is Jiri Kulich. And we'll talk a lot about Kulich today here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. By the way, some league-wide NHL stuff that I wanted to touch on late in today's show. Karill Kaprizov turning down the largest contract in NHL history from the Minnesota Wild. So it's kind of an example. We'll get to it. An example of, not everybody has an easy time getting their players to stay. I know the Sabres have that happen more than anybody, but here's Minnesota getting a little taste of that as well, maybe. That's coming up, though, much later on in today's show. We'll talk a lot about Kulik coming up here. So if you've got a thought, really like the text question I asked that I wanted to get from listeners was how many goals you think Jiri Kulich is going to score in 25-26. You want to reach out on Twitter as well, at Locked On Sabres. You could do that there too. So really where I want to jump off here with this question about whether Kulich can be the number one center, he might need to, right? As we pointed out, I don't know if Josh Norris has that in him. And I don't know if Josh Norris is going to be available to them. And you'll bump up Ryan McLeod if there's an injury to be the second line center, but you would never want him as your number one center. And that means that the job's up to Jiri Kulich. Unless Tage Thompson were to slide over to center at some point. But at the close of the 24-25 season, Kulich was skating primarily at center between Tage Thompson and Zach Benson. So let's go through, start things off by looking at Kulich's rookie year, the signs we saw, the type of player that he was developing into, and then we'll get to where he fits in this upcoming season. But starting off in his rookie year, he began the season as a healthy scratch, right? The Sabres go over to Europe, and he's a healthy scratch. He ends up working his way into the lineup as a regular eventually after about the first month of the year. There was still a little bit of, he's a scratch here, he's a scratch there. And he didn't record, he recorded a goal in his fourth game of the season. But it was only 1 goal, 0 assists in his first 10 games, playing not a lot of minutes. Like, it really wasn't really going. And then December hit. And that's when he began starting to score. At the start of December, of last year, Kulik had played 15 games and had 2 goals, no assists, averaging like 12 minutes a night. He goes into December, and just in that month alone, he scored 5 goals in 12 games and added, not a lot of assists, and that'll be a part of today's story too, but 5 goals, 2 assists in 12 games compared to 2 goals, no assists in 15 games before that. And that was really the point where it's, okay, at the least, this guy's an NHL player. This guy's an NHL player. He's worthy of being in the lineup, and he's worthy of being even in the top 6 and being given opportunities to help this team offensively. That also is about the time that Lindy Ruff realized, oh, this guy's better at center than he is on the wing. The coaching staff, we talked with Seth Appert on WGR throughout the season as well, and he kind of said the same thing. Like, there's strengths to Kulik's game down the middle as a shooter that allowed him to be a little bit more comfortable, and it just looked a little bit more natural. It's a position he's played a lot growing up and developing. So they put him at center, and that also allowed Thompson to move over to the wing. They also flirted with Cousins on the wing at times, so they were moving things around. He eventually finds his home down the middle, and that's where you would expect him to be at the beginning of this season. So as that year goes on, he's scoring here and there. He's scoring some big goals. He scored an overtime goal to beat Anaheim along the way. He had a really nice 2-goal effort against Nashville in January that I remember. And I went back and watched all of his goals before this episode. And I remember that Nashville game because they were snipes. Like, they were the Kulik goals that you would think of him for. Wrist shot from the slot or wrist shot from the right wall, and he just beats the goaltender clean. Now, going back and watching all of his goals from last year, one thing that I didn't remember was how many goals he scored deflecting pucks in and around the net. And that is not something that I think of him for, but there were a few of those, and he looked pretty good doing that as a net front presence as well. I don't think he spent a lot of time doing that last year because he was a little bit more of the shooter, a little bit out further away from the net. He is very good. Jiri Kulich showed me that not only is he a player that, think of Victor Olofsson for this, where the puck gets on his stick and it's a flick of the wrist and the guy gets a ton of weight on it, ton of torque, and he's able to rip a shot almost looking effortlessly. And he has that finish when he's got some space. Puck is, right in the wheelhouse. But what I was impressed from Kulik in year one was not just his ability to shoot the puck when it's a perfect pass and it's right in his wheelhouse, but this is kind of the net front type of goals. Vanek was always very good at this, is when the pass isn't always perfect, or when the puck isn't always in the greatest position, that you can dig a puck out of, oh, it wasn't on my front foot, it was on my back foot. I've got to lean a little too further to the right, and I've got to put more weight on my stick than normal, where a lot of players will fan on a puck in that situation. Kulik shows an ability to still get a good shot away, to roof it over a goaltender. He is able to score from bad angles between his body and the puck. And that, to me, is a player that not only will score from distance, but also could score around the net. So maybe there's a little bit more of that for him, given that Tage Thompson's a player that can play a little bit away from the net. I think if he plays with Zach Benson, and we'll get to that where he fits, maybe there's a little bit of both in the works for Kulik, but was impressed by his ability around the net, deflecting pucks and digging them out of his feet to score. But the number one trait this guy's got is his shot. He was a goal scorer in year one, and I think that's what he's on the verge of being in year number 2. So last year, in totality, 15 goals, 9 assists, 24 points, playing 62 games. The goal total, 15 goals, 62 games as a 20-year-old rookie. That's not bad at all. That's actually fairly strong, I would say. If you look at rookies over the course of the year, like, he is higher on the list. Not to the point where he was a rookie of the year candidate, but he had a nice rookie season as a goal scorer. The two problems that existed with Kulik, given that at the moment, he's a purely offensive player. Not there as a defensive player. In fact, there were a lot of times throughout the year where I think you could easily call Kulik a defensive liability. He wasn't, he might have been playing as their number one center at times throughout the year, but he was not the guy that you wanted out there on the ice to close a lead late in a game. That wasn't his job, nor would you expect it to be at this age. I feel like there's more to come for him as a two-way player, given that he was supposed to be pretty good at that before the pre-draft process. Remember, he was, talked about in that way as a very competitive defensive player at junior levels. And maybe in Rochester, even he would give you a little bit of that. We didn't really see anything at the NHL level in year one that would tell me, ooh, this guy's a Selke guy in the future. But I think there's a lot of room between what he was last year and Selke. He could find a nice middle ground as a responsible defensive player. I don't think he has to be a liability for his entire career. In fact, I would predict that he won't be. That's one part. We knew that. Playmaking. If you're going to be a number one center, and not only that, but you are going to be a number one center that has Tage Thompson on your wing, and we'll see who Thompson plays with. Josh Norris played with Thompson in the couple of games that he played, but then he got hurt, and it was a lot of Kulik and Thompson. And that line looked good with Benson on the left. If they want to run that back, Kulik's got to become a better playmaker. Now, he's a shooter too. It's why I don't really love the idea of Thompson and Kulik being paired together. Now, we'll get a little bit more in on that when we come back, because this is kind of gets to what this year will look like for Kulik, which has got to be better than 24 points. It's got to be more than 9 assists. If you're going to be a top 6 centerman in the NHL, you got to give more than 9 assists. You got to be able to set people up on a regular basis. That part of his game going into this year. And also, I want to get to his role on the power play. I got some numbers on that, and I got the line mates that I think Kulik would play best with when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. And the NFL season is here, and soon enough that NHL season will be here too. Don't sleep on it. It comes up quick. And FanDuel's making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 of bonus bets to use all across the app. Maybe you want to use it on the big fight this weekend, the biggest boxing fight in maybe 5 years. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check it out. You got some fun bets on that. You got a Thursday night game tonight, and I'm looking at Ertz. Ertz just gets those receptions, he piles them up, and that's what I'm going for tonight. It's kind of a boring bet, but listen, sometimes the boring bets are the good bets. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays, or in this case, to your Thursday nights. So, ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet today. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. As always, thanks for making us your first listen every day. We want to remind you right now that we got a listener survey right now. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey, learn more about our listeners, and to make all your favorite podcasts even better. So go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. And everyone that does complete a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. So it only takes a couple minutes. You might win a gift card. You help us out. Appreciate anybody that does that. It's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Back to Jiri Kulich. We're exploring today. If it can't be Josh Norris as your number one center, well, what about Jiri Kulich? And I think what's most likely here, by the way, is that these two guys are both going to look like mid-level second-line centers. And you have two second-line guys that are trying to get the job done in a little bit of a bigger role than maybe they're used to. But if you have two guys that are kind of splitting that responsibility, maybe it goes a little bit better. The other thing is Ryan McLeod is likely going to be the player matched up with other teams' top-line centers. So that hopefully makes the job a little bit easier for Kulik, a little bit easier for Norris, that they would hopefully get some softer matchups line to line. Well, What about Kulik and where he fits? Well, before we get to the power play stuff, because I got some alarming numbers about Kulik on the power play. First, his line combo. I already told you I don't really like the idea of him being paired with Tage Thompson going forward. It's tough though. That's why I kind of like Thompson at center. I don't love Norris as a fit with Thompson. I don't love Kulik as a fit with Thompson. Now those two did look good though together in a small sample size at the end of last year. If you want to keep that going, then I don't think that that's totally offensive. When I look though at the roster, and if the job were, and I know that this is not the job is to get the most out of the Buffalo Sabres and to do what's best for the team. If the job was just to get the most out of Jiri Kulich, I believe that the right two line mates for him would be Jason Zucker and Alex Tuch. I'll tell you why. One, both of those players, in my opinion, possess the weaknesses that Kulich has. Tuch, Zucker, it is skating, it is puck retrieval, it is a little bit of playmaking on both ends. It's veteran players that would be surrounding a young guy trying to figure out his way in the league. Zucker, I also picked because Zucker and Kulich got a little bit close last year personally, and I don't want to quite call Zucker a mentor, but it did sound like he helped Kulich a lot last year as a veteran in the room, bringing the rookie along. He's very high on Kulich. So there's a personal relationship there that I think could help build more chemistry on the ice. And I like the styles of the players there. I think Zucker and Tuch could make Kulich's job a lot easier defensively as he learns that part of the game. So that's my favorite line. That's my favorite line that Kulich would be a part of. Zucker could be the net front guy. Tuch can do all the dirty stuff around the boards, and he could forecheck, and Kulich can get into those open areas and rip it. Like, mostly, it's rip it. And I think Kulich has a little bit of a ways to go as a puck carrier through the neutral zone, getting pucks out of your own ends, setting up in the offensive zone. These are strengths of Alex Tuch. And I would like to see Tuch be paired with Kulich. But Tuch's really kind of the perfect type of line mate for anybody, so it's kind of easy to say that, but he would be my favorite idea for Kulich going forward. Kulich, Zucker, Tuch. We'll see, though, what we get. Because, again, at the end of last year, it was Kulich, Benson, and Thompson. The other thing I want to touch on with Kulich, and this is, to me, where if you're going to be a number one center in the NHL, you got a couple things he's got to do. He's got to get more assists. You got to have more than 8. You got to get your teammates in better positions to score. You got to be better defensively. And got to help the team out of the power play, even if it's only a little bit. And last year, not only did he not help a little bit, amazingly, because Kulich is a sniper. One-timers, you plug him over on that right wing. You just feed him one-timers, and you watch the puck go into the back of the net. That's what it would feel like you would get from Jiri Kulich. But last year, in 85 minutes of power play time, and that's number 2 unit power play time. 85 minutes, he was always on the second unit. Very rarely was he on the top unit. In comparison, 85 minutes for him versus 163 for Jack Quinn, 163 for Jack Quinn, or 184 for Tuch, or 205 for Zucker, 215 for Tage, and so on and so forth. Like, most guys at the top of the lineup for the Sabres were doubling him, if not tripling him, in terms of time on ice. But still, 85 minutes, that's 40 power plays worth, right? That is 40 power plays worth of ice time for Jiri Kulich. And he had, in those 40 power plays of minutes, 0 goals, 0 assists. Couple of things, though, it makes it a little unfair to Kulich. He did score. I went back and looked. He scored twice on the season, 1 second after a power play expired. So he didn't score on the power play officially. He kind of did, like, as the guy is stepping out of the penalty box. So he's not involved in the play yet. He, in one of them, he ripped a one-time. Actually, both of them, he just ripped one-timers, the goals that you would expect from him. So he had 0 power play goals. You kind of want to give him credit for 2, but Still, 0 points in 40 power plays, even if it was 2. That's not great either. I mean, Zach Benson, who's not a goal scorer at all, in 104 minutes of power play time, scored 3. So that kind of puts into perspective what you want from Kulik. Now, I think there are some numbers that show you should expect him to score. Like, you should expect him to get some goals. He was getting chances. He was getting shots off. And I think that those are going to find the back of the net. But that's a question. And I think the Sabres are going to need him to do that. I mean, you've got 218 power play minutes from JJ Peterka last year to replace. Somebody's got to play those 218 minutes. Also, you have 138 minutes from Dylan Cousins to replace. Now, at the moment, when I look at their power play, I wonder if Kulik is going to be on that top unit, because I think Tage Thompson, of course, would be. Dahlin would be. And then the other 3, that's a question. Josh Norris is why I think Kulik doesn't see number 1 power play time. So I'd love to see Kulik become a number 1 level center at 5-on-5. On the power play, I'm going Norris over Kulik for that right wing position. Now, here's an idea for you. Just trying to think of ideas, because I've said this a bunch, and you're going to hear me say it all season. The best chance the Sabres have of making the playoffs is to get a great goalie year and a great power play year. Well, they've been bad on the power play. So how do you get a great power play year? Their biggest problem on the power play has often been they only have one real finisher on the whole unit. And that allows penalty kills to pay ultra attention to Tage Thompson and say, go ahead, Dahlin, go ahead, Cousins, go ahead, Zucker, shoot. We'll take our chances. And sometimes they lost because sometimes Zucker scored, right? He was the guy who did that. But most times I'm going to say Tage is the guy I'm taking away. Sabres need more finishers on that number 1 unit. Let me get both of them out there. Let me get Josh Norris on the right side, ripping one-timers, scored a bunch of power play goals in Ottawa. Let me put Kulik in the high slot. Let's do, or even in front of the net, but I like the idea of him in the high slot a little bit better. I wonder how he'd do in that. Sometimes you have to be a quick distributor, a quick thinker in that high slot, because if you're going to pass the puck from that position and you get it, you've got to do it in a half a second, because you are in the tightest area of the ice on the power play. You're in the position that the penalty kill is trying to take away. So they're not going to allow you to have the puck for more than a half a second. It's got to be puck on your stick, puck off your stick. And I question whether Kulik is that quick of a processor to play that spot. I hope he could be, though, because if he can, those times where he has an open one-timer from the high slot, that's going to be the most dangerous player out there at times. And then I would have Tage as a finisher on the left, Norris as a finisher on the right, Kulik as a finisher in the middle, and then maybe you've got Zucker in front of the net, you got Dahlin at the point. Like, that's an idea. That's a real idea on the power play. So I guess that's kind of one of the biggest lineup things I'm looking for when they hit training camp is how are they going to balance all this? How are they going to balance Norris on that unit? Are they going to try to get Kulik on the number 1 unit, or will they just go Benson or Tuck or do something a little more, safe? We'll see what they do, but that's what I would start with. If I were Lindy Ruff, I would start with Tage on the left, Norris on the right, Zucker in front, Dahlin on the point, and Kulik in that high middle, and see if he can do it. All right, Jiri Kulich, ending summary here because I want to talk a little about Karill Kaprizov in Minnesota. Ending summary for me is this guy's going to be a good NHL player for a long time. He's got things to get to work on. He's got to become a better playmaker, better puck carrier, better defensive player. And he's got to produce on the power play. I bet he gets there on most of those things. All of them, probably not. If he gets there on all of them, he's a superstar. But of those 4 or 5 things I just mentioned he's got to improve on, I bet you 3 of them he will. And I would imagine by the end of this season, we're talking about a 25 to 30 goal scorer with the potential for him to have even more than that. I think you could see the level of production offensively from Jiri Kulich that you have seen from JJ Peterka in recent years. And if it comes to someone internally has got to replace those 27 goals and 68 points that JJ Peterka gave you last year. I know I often talk about Benson for this or Quinn for this because they're wingers, but the guy in the lineup that is most likely to elevate his production from last year to this year to get anywhere around like a 68-point season, it's Kulik. Kulik is the guy for that. And I would bet you we're talking about a 50-point player by the end of this year. And I know that's a lot. That is doubling his point total from last year, but he's showing signs that season is in there for right now and maybe more than that beyond. All right, that's going to do it for us today here on Kulik specifically. I want to talk a little around the NHL. Not as much for the Sabres because I think if he's not going to stay in Minnesota, why would he stay here? But there's some league trends. McDavid's been mentioned in the last 24 hours. Some stuff I want to get to around the league when we come back here on Locked On Sabres. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Monarch Money. You know, most people can't name where all their financial accounts are or what they are worth, whether it's 401ks or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch's built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does that heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes. It's all right there in one place. Clear data visuals, smart categorization of your spending. You finally feel like you're in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNHL. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Be sure to check out Locked On NHL, the Kaprizov story, or how about the Canadian Prime Minister citing Connor McDavid? I don't know where he was doing this speech, but there's a clip of the Canadian Prime Minister doing a speech where he's talking about inflation, he's talking about trade, and like how there's certain things in Canada that aren't going well. And then he's like, yeah, you know, trade's not going well, or this isn't going well. McDavid's unsigned. He just threw that in. And he's like, well, at least we got Draisaitl. And I don't know where Edmonton fans are on that right now. If I were an Oilers fan, I would be losing my mind on a daily basis, worried that the best player of the last 40 years in the NHL is potentially going to leave me in less than 12 months. And I, at the moment, would be expecting that. Could be wrong. He's always left the door a little bit ajar when he speaks about it. Talked recently about scoring like 50 goals this year, which is interesting. Last year only scored 26. But anyways, like McDavid is the story for the next 12 months because I think he's going to Tampa personally. It's just a guess. And Edmonton's worried about it. The Prime Minister's talking about it. But he's not the only contract dilemma that's going on in the league. Karill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild, who's been an elite offensive player pretty much since the day he showed up in the NHL. He was almost a point a game player that first year, 51 points in 55 games. He had 108 the following year. He's awesome. He's an awesome player. He's super dynamic. He's an amazing skater. He's great with the puck as a playmaker. He's great at shooting and scoring. Smaller player, right? 5'10", but I love the player. He reportedly, according to Frank Saravelli, and then Michael Russo of The Athletic wrote a story today about how the Wild felt embarrassed by that story getting out. So kind of sounded like to me that they are kind of telling you that that's true by saying that we're embarrassed by it. Kaprizov turned down, allegedly, a deal that would pay him $16 million per year, which it does sound like a shocking number. There's a sticker shock to that. Here's why it's not crazy to me that he's turning that deal down, which would be an 8-year, $128 million contract. Kaprizov, who will be, I believe he'll be a free agent same time as McDavid, next July 1st, man, you could have the greatest free agency period in NHL history by a landslide if McDavid and Kaprizov were to make it. He's in the final year of his deal, and $16 million will be there for him from somebody if he wants it. And this can happen with these Russian guys sometimes. This was Panarin, right? Where this is Kucherov. This was said about at one point in time, although he ended up staying, so they didn't act on this. That some of these Russian guys, not all of them, but some of them want to go to big markets, and I think that's kind of how it reads about Kaprizov right now. Like, I don't just want to tell you he's going to copycat Panarin, but I'm guessing Tampa for McDavid. I'm guessing the Rangers for Kaprizov. I think he just does what Panarin did, and he goes from a small market in Columbus to the giant market in New York. I think Kaprizov does that from Minnesota to New York. So he's an amazing player. Here's why $16 million is not really that much. If you look at percentage of the cap, given what it will be in a year, when that contract would kick in, it will be over $100 million, like a $20 million increase in salary cap space from 2 years ago to next year. By percentage of the cap, the NHL doesn't really do this as often. The NFL does this, percentage of the cap, NBA. It's not really even much of a pay it raise. Like, he'd be getting paid in line with what the top elite players of the league have been getting for the last 3 to 5 years. So $16 million, I don't know why anybody wouldn't give him that. I mean, if I were the Sabres, I would certainly offer him that. I would have 0.0 expectation that he would want to sign in Buffalo if he doesn't want to sign it in Minnesota. That team, I mean, it's not a small market as Buffalo, but they're a smallish market, and they have been successful comparatively. They've been successful. They don't win in the playoffs, but they at least get there. No way he would come to Buffalo. But next year, like, you want to know the teams that will have the money to offer him $16 million a year going into it? All of them. All of them. There is not a single team in the league that going into next year without doing anything from right now to then, and teams will, there's not a single team in the league that won't have $16 million in cap. Carolina will have the least, and that number will be 16.1. So they could offer him 16 if they really wanted to. Everybody in the league could offer it to him. In fact, you know what's funny? I don't think this is going to make Sabre fans feel great. Or will it? Because, I don't know. We want to see them spend money, right, and show their commitment. Going into next year, like right now, cap dollars committed for next season already, the Buffalo Sabres are 7th in the NHL in money they've already spent for the 26-27 season. In fact, let's say, hypothetically speaking, they signed Alex Tuch in the next week, right before training camp, to a deal that'll pay him, let's say, $8 million a year, which I actually think it could be more, but let's just say 8. If he were to sign for $8 million, now I'm going to make it 8.3. Sorry for be very specific here. You're going to know why in a second. Let's say they sign him to a deal for $8.3 million per year. Anything above that, the Sabres will have the most cap committed in 26-27 in the entire NHL. How about that? The cheap team that never spends, that completely just passed on the window of opportunity when all these guys were on entry-level contracts and all this cap space, and we don't want to take advantage of that. We don't want to sign a couple of veterans to 2-3 year deals to try to make the playoffs. No, we're good. It's all over. And now they're paying everybody. And I guess it is good and bad, right? It's good because it shows that they're committed to spending to win. But on the other hand, this team still stinks, maybe, and they'll have the most money spent because that part won't feel great either. They can't really win, I guess, in this situation, other than if they just get good, which is what we really all just really want. So, yeah, if Tuch signs for anything more than $8.3 million or more, the Sabres will have the most money already committed to 26-27, which is pretty nuts. Anyways, this was on Kaprizov. So $16 million a year. I think he can get 17. I think he can get 18, whatever the max is. I wonder if the NHL will start having that happen. Because right now, nobody is spending to the cap. like a couple of teams, and they're going to have to spend this money somewhere. Why wouldn't teams start giving out max contracts? The NBA does it. Other leagues do it. Why wouldn't the NHL do it? I don't know. Maybe someone will be the first through the door. All right, that'll do it for us today here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. A lot of good stuff on Kulik. If you want to text in or tweet in about how many goals you think he'll score this year, I've seen a lot of people in the 25 to 30 range. One guy said 40 or more. Let me know what you think at Locked On Sabres on Twitter or the text club. Join subtext.com/Locked On Sabres. That'll do it for us. Another question for you on our next show, but more so, we'll start getting into the Prospects Challenge and see how these kids are starting to do before we roll into the preseason as well. Here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.